My name is Chintan Patel. I'm the Executive Director of Indian American Impact Fund. We're a national organization that's working specifically to help increase representation for our communities. So helping elect Indian and South Asian Americans up and down the ballot, not just, obviously. We're very excited to help elect the first South Asian president, but also down ballot as well. And the other core mission that we have is to help increase participation and engagement from our community in the electoral and civic advocacy, political advocacy space. That's voting. Obviously, we want to continue to increase voter turnout in our communities, but also, everything from donating and volunteering and engaging in the policy process, calling your members of Congress and state legislators. So we've been at work doing just that this election cycle over the last year. We've been hard at work supporting candidates who are running up and down the ballot. We obviously have two incredible candidates who are running for Congress this year who would join our 5 members of the so-called Samosa Caucus, Suhas Subramanian in Virginia's 10th congressional district, and Amish Shah, who's running in a red to blue race in Arizona's 1st congressional district. So that's an incredible opportunity. We have candidates running down ballot in really important, critical state legislative seats. Take, for example, Anna Thomas in Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania Democrats have a 1-seat majority in the state house. Anna Thomas's district, she's running to defeat an incumbent Republican. It's a tipping point district. It could come down to her district in terms of who wins or loses the PA House. We have a South Asian candidate there, Aswin Ramaswamy, an amazing Gen Z candidate who's running for state senate in Georgia, in one of the only competitive state senate seats there. So we have these incredible candidates that we've been working with all year in terms of supporting their campaigns, in terms of mobilizing our community to make sure they have the resources they need, running paid advertising programs to support their campaigns, help them win their primaries, and now help them win their general elections. But then on that fateful day, I'm sure we all remember July 21st, we had the vice president, announce her candidacy for the presidency, and almost immediately, within minutes, we saw this outpouring of enthusiasm from our community. They were excited to volunteer. They wanted to know what can they do. We've never canvassed before, but we're ready. We want to do it. We've never phone banked. We want to do it. We've never text banked. Where can I get postcards? I want to write postcards to our community. Where can I donate? So there was this incredible enthusiasm that popped up that has stayed throughout these last 3.5 months and increased as well. Impact, we've been on the ground, mobilizing in Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia, these last 3.5 months. Yesterday, I was in Michigan. We had an incredible slate of events, starting with a canvas launch with Camilla Jayapal and Mark Ruffalo, the Incredible Hulk. And then ended with a Diwali celebration at an early vote site with Maya Harris. And, the incredible energy from the community is really reaching this crescendo. We understand what's at stake. Our community understands what's at stake in this election. There is really a true contrast in visions, and we're talking obviously in the Diwali holiday season as well. And it's not lost on me that in very real ways, this election is about good versus evil. It's about, light over darkness. It's about hope over despair. It's about knowledge over ignorance. And I think the community is really galvanized around that. They see the threat that former President Trump can pose, and they're not taking anything for granted. We saw even, yesterday at the canvas launch, we saw first-time door knockers out there. They're like, we weren't sure. We weren't sure if this was for us, but we couldn't leave it to chance. We couldn't risk Trump winning again. So we have to do everything possible to help. And for the volunteers that we're talking to, the representation is a big piece of it. Being able to turn on your TV and see someone who looks like you, but it's about the policies too. It's about the vision that she has that's going to help our families. So that was a long way of me answering. The energy is really something else from our community. They've really engaged in a big way. They're excited to see the vice president use her lived experience. We haven't even talked about this yet, but
Yeah,
the caregivers plan, right? The caregivers plan is such a great example of why representation matters, because our communities, we know from a personal experience, we're taking care of our elders and raising our kids at the same time, and that creates an undue burden,
yeah,
economic stress, mental stress, and nobody else, no candidate, no president has ever specifically highlighted and put out an agenda and a plan to help caregivers.
yeah.
This is
No,
possible because of who she is.
it's amazing. I mean, the connections and all the different tentacles within our community are huge. And I'm glad you mentioned up and down the ballot. There's so many candidates that Impact is supporting and really making sure that their message is amplified out there. Not to mention, of course, the theme of this latest stream of podcasts with the meme that I made, the Lotus for POTUS, and
That's right.
getting out there is critical. And yes, if we can make it all about Diwali and make that the metaphor going forward all the time, I think we would all be, very well served. I want to ask you, because you have a front row seat, of course, to especially getting people enthusiastic, but also making them feel how imperative this is, right? So there
Yeah.
are still those out there who feel like they have an apathy towards this. There are still those out there who feel like they're struggling because of some insecurity, whatever that might be,
Hmm.
right, in getting out there to vote, in any of the candidates, but particularly in what's going on at the presidential level. What do you either think is causing this, and for that matter, as someone who's been canvassing and really working it so hard at this, what is it that gets them to the finish line and really
Yeah.
gets them out there?
Yeah. Look, we're every election cycle. I know we find ourselves saying this is the most important election in our lifetimes, is
Right.
existential, um, and it's not lost on me that this election is happening sort of in the backdrop of a war that has gone on in the Middle East for a year, over a year now, and that's something that impacts our communities specifically.
Yeah.
It's happening in the backdrop of, um, you know, we've recovered from COVID, but there's still lingering parts of damage from COVID, particularly to the economy. We've seen, the increasing cost of things like groceries, etc. Um, and we're also, having this election in a backdrop of a truly divided country,
Mm,
where um, you know there's been part of this MAGA movement that Trump has um, created, that he has fueled, that he continues to fuel, that has really divided this country, and I think it creates this context where it is tough. It is tough for some people to um, make that decision,
yeah.
to vote for one candidate or another, or to vote third party, or to sit it out. Sit on your couch and not vote, and express your displeasure, or the fact that you're undecided. Register it by not voting. Um, I think one of the things that's important for us as organizers is to acknowledge this. I think
Yeah.
um,
Almost
anytime you're
have
doing
that empathy,
organizing,
if you will.
exactly.
Yeah.
Anytime you're doing organizing work, you're not going to get people to move by simply saying your concerns, they're not valid. Put them aside.
Right.
This is about something bigger. It is about something bigger. It is about, do women have the ability to make decisions about their own bodies? It is about that. Is it about, do we have our communities? Are they going to be safe from gun violence? Is it about our communities are going to be safe from the awful, awful side effects of climate change? It
Right.
is about, are our families going to be able to stay together in
Mm,
a world where we have one party vehemently and outspokenly advocating for mass deportations?
yeah.
It is about these existential crises, but simply saying, hey, your concerns, the reasons why you're having a hard time making this decision, they're not important. Put them aside. That is not how you organize. That is not how we mobilize and persuade voters and get them to our side and get them to go out and vote. So I think it's incumbent on us as organizers, as people who want to see an outcome for our country that helps all Americans, to meet voters where they are,
Hmm.
to have that discussion with empathy, to talk about the issues that impact our families, that are going to impact their families, and have an honest discussion. And
Yeah.
I think if we can do that, at the doors, this is a good example, right? At the doors, even today, even yesterday, we ran into voters who were undecided,
Yeah.
who weren't sure they were going to vote. The best way to move them forward is to have an honest discussion about what are the issues, what what are the feelings and the issues that are preventing them from, voting, or preventing them from voting for Harris, and talking about, from your own perspective, why is this election important? Why is it important to support Kamala Harris? Why is her vision the vision we want to see for our country?
Yeah.
One of the things I will, inevitably I turn to in these conversations is my kids. I have two kids. I have an almost 4-year old and an 18-month-old. I have a niece and a nephew who are 12 and 10, and um, I think about the country that they're going to grow up in. I
Yeah.
think about you know a world where Donald Trump is president again. And over the next 4 years, he's going to be on TV. He's going to be spewing his vitriol and anger and hate for everyone to see. And he's going to be enacting policies that are going to hurt our kids on a
Yeah.
daily basis. So I like to close on that, right? We all, for our families, for our kids, for our daughters, for our mothers, for our sisters, like this election is important. We cannot sit it out,
Yeah.
but we have to meet voters where they are.
And I think it's so important to remember that your when you lead with empathy, when you actually build some common connection, whether that's through children, whether that's through reproductive rights, any issue there's some common thread there. And
Yeah,
being able to sort of like host that conversation with honesty and openness, and in a way, that's the sort of antidote to apathy. And the reminder, of course, that you can be an evangelical, you can actually be very staunch in your beliefs. Your vote does not actually stop that.
that's right.
You're voting with your conscience, and really thinking about that vitriol and thinking about what the options are here, and what's at stake. Actually, make that there. I'm curious for you. You've knocked on thousands of doors now, right? I mean, like you've
Yeah,
been canvassing, you've been doing it, and with a huge team, and with a huge team of
that's right.
volunteers. What have been one or two of the very surprising lessons that you learned this cycle so far? That, I mean, again, we've said this for months, even years now, that we know these candidates. We know
Hmm.
Donald Trump. We're not unearthing brand new things here. But for you
Yeah,
personally, what's been some of the surprises that particularly have struck you these past few weeks or months?
yeah. I mean, look, one of the surprises that I don't, surprise might not be the right word for it, but one of the things that um, I think has been, and I've been doing political work for 15, 20 years now. And, I joined Impact earlier this year in February, quite an interesting year to
Yeah.
join in this work. But one of the things that I've seen over the last few months, particularly out on the campaign trail, but also just having conversations with our community, is um, this piece, Vice President Harris has sort of really put into policy what representation means.
Mm,
And
yeah.
it's been so evident so quickly. And I know I'm coming back to it, but like the caregiver's agenda, right? It, we've had all these presidents. No one and candidates, and no one has ever run on a platform that clearly speaks to the struggles of so many middle class families.
Yeah.
Something that is so relevant to us as South Asians, as Asians, because it is something that we all have an experience with.
Mm.
And so did she.
Yeah.
So did she. And she used that lived experience to create a policy agenda that's going to help millions of families. And to me, that is why representation matters. That is why building a democracy that reflects the makeup of this country, that is truly inclusive and diverse, matters. Um, because it's going to help all of our families if we add more voices, more
Right.
diversity into the system. And it's been kind of a marvel to see, firsthand how that has impacted our community.
Yeah.
We've been over the last few cycles, our turnout rates have been going up, but even still, our direct engagement has been lacking, right? It's certainly been lacking from, the Black community, the Latino community, et cetera.
Yeah.
And the energy that I've seen at the doors of first-time South Asian volunteers,
Mm.
mothers and daughters, fathers and sons, and fathers and daughters, like multi-generational too, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing.
It's kids bringing their parents bringing their kids out, first-time volunteers, and that is honestly incredible. It's been
Yeah.
incredible to watch. And I'm excited about what it means, right? And we're fighting to November 5th. We want to make sure we win this election. We have to win this election. But I'm excited about what it means for the future,
I
because it's
love that.
just the first stop. November 5th is just the first stop
Yeah.
on the long journey. So
Yeah, no, totally. And I love that word marvel, because you're right that if you really think about it, if there's a true bridge that exemplifies us as a community, that expanding caregiving through Medicare, and really making
hmm,
it a true community-based, multi-generational,
yeah,
real signature of our community. There can't be a better example of that. And Vice President Harris is certainly, pitching that, but also, going to be following through on that promise, hopefully after the
exactly.
next few days. We only got a couple of minutes left, but I wanted to, quickly finish with this one. I mean, at the end of this, right? Everyone getting engaged, there's still time, and there's
Yeah,
still activity to be done. There's still a lot of work to be done.
yeah,
Obviously, that comes through either, phone banking, or donating, or getting active, getting engaged, or even just thinking carefully about how those connections can be made with voters who are out there. What are sort of the messages that you're prioritizing right now in these last few days? What are some of the things that impact, and those all around us should be really focusing on? Because it's, on the one hand, we can dig into the weeds and really, really get into it, and yet we're really at the finish line. So how do you
hmm,
prioritize in these last few days?
yeah. Look, I think we have one goal at this point. And we have 2 days left, two full days left before election day.
Right.
We have one goal at this point. It's to mobilize every vote that we can and get them to the polls.
Yep.
I know it's been a tiring 3.5 months. Everyone is exhausted. I get it. But there's one more door to knock. There's one more
Yep.
phone call to make. There's one
Right.
more text to send. So, for the listeners out there, please do everything possible, everything that you can think to do over the next 3 days. Do it, because the thing that we don't want is to wake up on November 6th and feel that we didn't do everything possible to make
Yeah.
sure Kamala Harris wins. So go to daisypresident.com. We have lots of volunteer opportunities. We are canvassing, we are phone banking, we're text banking on WhatsApp. We're WhatsApp banking, because that's where our community is. So sign up for those volunteer shifts. Make sure you can mobilize these voters in the battleground states where we know our community can make the difference. Our community will be the margin of victory in Pennsylvania, Michigan, Georgia, and North Carolina. So sign up to volunteer there. And then once you've done that, there are 5 people, 10 people in your network, in your family, your friends, your neighbors. Make sure you're reminding them to get out to vote. Make sure if you have early voting still going on in your state, make sure you're reminding them to go out and early vote. Some states still have early voting through today. And if you have a neighbor who hasn't voted yet by absentee or early voted, make sure you're reminding them to get out and vote on election day. That is incredibly important to make sure we're talking with folks in our network to
Right.
mobilize them to the polls as well.
Let me ask you one last thing, and that is, November 6th, we're all hoping, and hopefully it's November 6th and not too much after that, but, we're all hoping to wake up and feel even more energized than we did on November 5th.
That's right.
And yet we know that there's a lot of possibility out there, and we
Yeah.
don't want those possibilities to be there. And not even for the presidential election, but we know that there are going to be some candidates down ballot who may not actually, make it to the finish line.
Yeah.
And, even beyond this, globally, beyond this election, like you said, the work's not done even after November 5th and November
No.
6th. So is there a message of how you hope to wake up and
Yeah.
feel even more optimistic about what the work is ahead to continue all of this going forward?
Yeah. Look, here's how I'm expecting to wake up. I'm expecting to wake up with just unbridled joy because
Yeah.
Vice President Harris will be um, Madam President elect, and I
Hmm.
cannot wait for that moment. It
Yeah.
is going to be an incredible moment for me personally, for my family, for our country. So that's how I'm expecting to wake up. Regardless of what happens, here's what I'm also expecting to be absolutely and fully committed to making progress happen. And that's something
Yeah.
we're going to have to strive for, whether she's president elect or not president elect. We are
Right.
going to have to continue to stay involved in this process. We cannot wake up on November 6th and say, job done, or wake up on November 6th and say, I'm demoralized. Yes,
Yeah.
we either way, people should take a break, take a step back, reflect, and try to appreciate the moment we're in. But we have to stay in this fight. We have
Yeah.
to stay in this work to create the progress that we want. It takes all of us. She alone, as president, is not going to be able to enact the policies that she is running on. She's going to need our support. Our community is going to have to back her up throughout her presidency. And we need to stay engaged locally as well. Building a foundation at the local level creates the change at the national level as well. So,
Yeah.
for me, my expectation is to wake up with joy because we know Vice President Harris is going to win this election. Um, but it's also to wake up recommitted to this fight, recommitted to this work, because
Well,
there's no other option.
and we are all so grateful and so proud of the commitment that you and Impact are really exemplifying out there and really galvanizing so many in the community, and making sure that that foundation is there and hopefully realized in the next several days. Chintan, thank you so much for joining us, and really congratulations on everything, and so proud to join you in this fight.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it.
You're listening to Trust Me, I Know What I'm Doing. Stay tuned.